Here we go. Right, so I was given the title last week by Adam of basically Dream Coat. I thought, right, I've got to do something on this, and so prepare yourself for a bit of Bible study, okay? So I hope you've either got your Bible with you or you've got your apps on your phone, but please feel free to get them because I'm going to occasionally want to throw things out to you. Now, in the Bible, I'm going to talk, first of all, I'm going to talk about dreams in the Bible, and I'm going to talk about colours in the Bible today. So, let's go right back to the beginning. God is basically there for mankind. He wants to save us, he wants to have a relationship with us. And through the Bible, we see that one way he does this is to make a number of covenants with us. Oh my God, I'm standing in one place there, aren't I? So, God's covenants are his promises, and he always stands by them. And so one of the first signs of God's promises is in Genesis 9 verse 16, which is where after the flood he comes along and basically he sets his bow in the sky, and it's got 7 colours in it, not 6. And so the rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look onto it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. Okay, that's Genesis. I've got my glasses on, but that's why I can't read these things. Sorry. New glasses this week. Right. So Genesis 9 verse 16. Okay. So there we go. Right. So as we work along, we see that he's actually made this covenant later on to Abraham, and that regards the future nation of Israel. Where in Genesis 15 verse 5, who wants to read that? Come on, someone. Who's got it? We've got Genesis 15 verse 5. Anybody?
I didn't know it was a 10.
It's only been Bible study, this. Otherwise I'm going to put myself in
The Lord
time.
took him outside and said, "Look at the sky and try to count the stars. You will have as many descendants as that."
Exactly. Thank you. So in other words, God was basically, saying to Abraham, we're going to make a nation and descendants in the future, and it's the way that God would show his love for mankind, and he'll use the Israeli nation, and he will use them again to bring about his purpose and his teaching to all mankind. Okay, so we're going to talk about Joseph next, because as you see on Genesis 37 5 to 5 to 9. Anybody, 5, 7 verse 9, so anybody wants to read that one out? 37, 5, 7 to 9. Anyone got it?
I've got it.
Go for it.
Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream that he had. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me."
Thank you, Abby. So Joseph not only had prophetic dreams, but he also had the gift from God to interpret those dreams. Now, when Joseph was made his coat of many colours, I think that was a sign, because the Bible's full of signs. I believe that was a sign of God's covenant with mankind, the fact that he wouldn't destroy the earth again through flood, but also the fact that he wanted to make a specific relationship with Israel. So I think he was actually showing Joseph that he would use him to save the nation of Israel, because that would be the means by which God would rescue and preserve the future of Israel and also the world during the 7-year world famine. So let's look specifically later on when there's a 7 year of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. In Genesis 41, 48 to 49, anybody want that one?
As Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt, and stored it in the cities. In each city he put the food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure.
Thank you. So I'm going to go a little bit off piste here, so to speak, because I want to just throw a theory out to you. Now, I might be wrong on this, but there's quite a lot of evidence that Joseph obviously was using something in Egypt to store this grain. Now, there's so many theories about the pyramids. That could be, first of all, they weren't actually used as tombs because no actual bodies of feathers have been found actually in the actual pyramids. And there's so many theories about it being some, like, you know, outer space people that have made it and all this rubbish. So basically, you've got to look down to what actually happened, what were they used for. I think one possible explanation for this is that they were used for the storage of great quantities of grain. And the reason I tell you about this is basically, even though that the years aren't correct, there's so many other factors that sort of point in this direction. Now, when Joseph was around, it was roughly around about 1800 BC, and yet the pyramids have carbon dated to much older than that, about 800 years beforehand. But then they were redated a few years later, and it turned out to be actually sort of like only 600 years beforehand. Now, it's a well-known fact that the Egyptians reused lots of materials, so if they were using the materials to build the pyramids, that could have been older. So basically, this carbon dating doesn't really hold too much water with me. There's also an 8-foot ancient Egyptian stele that records that the Nile rose and prevented crops being grown for 7 years. And Pharaoh called Joseph and Pharaoh called Joseph asked a gifted advisor called Imhotep to find a solution. And basically, there's quite a lot of records about Imhotep. But was he around 2500 BC, or was he much later than that? There's also a name on a tomb from the 18th dynasty of a foreign person of great importance. And the names on this tomb, strangely enough, are YA stroke A, YI stroke YR, and YU stroke Yi after it. These are very similar to Yahweh, name of God, you know. So another little thing is that grain has actually been found in the pyramids. And so it could well, I think it's a great theory that it was actually used to store 7 years of crops that basically could be used later on. So God in the Bible uses so many historical facts that we're actually discovering today, and that sort of just that underpins what we see. So there we go. And let's just go on to this now. So we've seen these are all the dreams and interpretations in the Bible. So first of all, it starts with Amalek is warning not to sleep with Sarah, Abraham's wife. Also, it's a really strange scenario that Abraham wanted, like to sort of just let Sarah do that. But really, it felt like his life was in danger. And so he gave it to Amalek. And Sarah was a very beautiful woman, even though at the time she was about, I think it's actually in her 80s. So God warned Amalek not to go ahead and do this. And basically, thank goodness he did, but I think that God did this because he wanted to preserve Abraham's seed, basically. He promised him this lineage, and he didn't want his wife being defiled. So there you go. We've got, after that was Jacob's ladder. We know the story of that. And somebody shout out and read Genesis 28 verse 12, please. It's keeping you awake anyway, isn't it?
He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven, and the angel of the God were ascending and descending on it.
Yeah, fantastic. Showing a way that there's God's making a way for the people of Israel to connect with him. We've already gone through Joseph sheaves and Joseph sun, moon and 11 stars. We've gone through the cupbearer and the baker, which I not mentioned that today. Well, that was another one where Joseph, that would later come back to allow him to be blessed by Pharaoh. And then we've seen the 7 years and 7 as a famine and to follow it. Later on, we've got Solomon was asked what he really wants, and he chose wisdom. Yeah. Good choice. Absolutely. I know. Well, in the last talk, I touched about Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the statue, and then Nebuchadnezzar's second dream, the tree. and Daniel's 4 beasts. So Daniel was very much involved in dreams and interpretations. Especially there's 4 beasts as well. So later on in the New Testament, we see again Joseph was given a dream, and to actually not divorce Mary, but to marry her, and thankfully, bring up Jesus. So there you go. And then finally, another little one is that I hadn't actually thought of when I was researching this, but Pilate's wife had the nightmare, and that's another way that God doesn't just use Christians in dreams; He uses non-Christians and brings about His truth to them.
Amen.
Okay, so next slide, please. There we go. So this is your first discussion. I want to get into groups, and these are your 3 questions that I want you to talk about for the next 15 minutes. Have you had a prophetic or meaningful dream that something really meant something to you, or something troubled you that you don't know the answer to it yet? Because if you don't get an interpretation, then have you asked God about it? And that's the other thing. Because I don't believe that God will give you a dream that has some real meaning for you or for someone around you, unless He's going to give you the interpretation.